Foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man has no place where he can rest. Foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man has no place where he can rest. Be as it may, home of the castaway, the city whispers, we fast and pray. A sinner's Saturday, the saints of the latter day. From the fabulous Fox Theater, we're like a block away. Cortland and Pine, where misfortunes align. The great disparity between your portion and mine. Such a morbid design, but of course with the time that passes, it has to start warping our mind. This familiar ugly, the foreign beauty. Amidst these red line neighborhoods, you'll find a ruby. There are hidden gems in plain sight. In this vicious world, Rufus Wainwright, limboing the poverty line, your life can become a crime. Panhandle for dollar signs, feeding me can get you fined. Medicate with free base, dank, or some kind of wine. We're missing rungs on that ladder to success that they want us to climb. I don't do handouts. I do not carry cash. I'll get you next time. This is all I have. All those declines to help, they ring hella hollow. A hungry belly with only pride to swallow. Pebbles on the street leave impressions on my cheek. Today's newspapers serve as tonight's bed sheet. I'm trying to make ends meet, locked in a dead heat. A survival, but yet I'm racing with these lead feet. But it is just as well. The streets of Pratt and Bell, prior to heaven, but after hell. Poverty's paradise, the vagrant Valhalla, somewhere between the Inshallah and the Our Father. The park is my kitchen, my living room's a bridge, my bed is a bench, and the trash can is my fridge. Midtown, 4th Ward, Southwest, too strong. See, the scabs of the city have been picked at for too long. Foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man has no place where he can rest. Foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man has no place where he can rest. That piece right there is part of a larger song entitled Curb Appeal, which deals with those in our community who are houseless. And I say houseless to make a distinction because just because you do not have a roof over your head or a place of residence does not mean that you are without a home.
We've all got to have this place where we come from. This place where we come from is called home. We set out on our travels. We do the best we can. We travel this big earth that we roam.
I come from a small town called Massillon, Ohio. Massillon, Ohio is much like many other Midwestern towns. We all had like ice cream trucks, right, that we would rush out to during the summertime. We had hills that we would find for winter that we could slide down with our sleds. We had a high school football team that the entire town was enamored with and shut down for, a la Varsity Blues, right? Like, this was what my home life was, right? We had mild springs, brutal winters, very, very hot summers as well. We also had those universal markers of childhood, my upbringing, like we all had to like be like home by the time the street lights came on, right? My mother, she often would say like she was gonna leave the porch light on for me so that I would know when to come home. I'm also a part of what is called the hip hop generation. Now, with the hip hop generation, we are obsessed with the idea of representation. That's why so many of our songs shout out like where we're from and our locations and whatnot and what have you. Massillon didn't have that much when it came to representation. We had, the Detroit Lions linebacker, Chris Spielman, Hall of Famer. We had David Canary, who was All My Children soap opera star. We also had a member of the band 98 Degrees. Now I'm saying a member because it wasn't even like the lead singer, it wasn't like a Lachey or anything like that. Like, it was literally just a dude in the band, like that guy. That guy is the one who's from Massillon, Ohio. Not exactly, even if you look at the tattoo, not exactly street credibility, right? But this is home, right? I love this. My parents, who I love so much, when I graduated from the one high school in my hometown, they were overjoyed, they were excited. My mom, she came up to me, she hugged me, she kissed me, she let me know how much she loved me and how proud she was of me. My father, he took a different route. My father, he gave me like a handshake that turns into one of those half hugs that we as men tend to do because we have issues with intimacy a lot of times, right? He did this, and he just said like a very short words. He said like, congratulations, now it's time for you to leave. Now, this is not because he did not love me. He very much loved me. He just knew that there was not a lot of opportunity in Massillon, Ohio for the young and in the ambitious or people with vision. He knew that if I was going to make my way, I would probably have to leave because Massillon had not a lot going on for it, much like the rest of the Rust Belt corridor. All we had was like empty warehouses, factories that were shut down. We didn't have a lot to offer for someone who wanted to make their way in this world. So with that, I ended up finding my way here to Atlanta, Georgia. I was overwhelmed as a young small town kid making my way in the city. I ended up at Morehouse College. Morehouse College is part of the Atlanta University Center, or the AUC. This consists of Morehouse College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse School of Medicine, Interdenominational Theological Center, and at the time, Morris Brown was there. This is known as the largest contiguous consortium of Black intelligentsia in the entire United States. Some say the world. This was a stark contrast to Massillon, Ohio. I'll say this, that when I graduated from Morehouse College, and I underscore graduation because I've got student loans to prove it to each and every one of you. When I graduated from Morehouse College, I was overwhelmed with what the opportunities were here in Atlanta for me. See, Atlanta, since the 1970s, had been known as the Black Mecca of the South. There was so much that one could do here. I found myself working in the marketing field, digital marketing to be exact. But I found myself that even after 5 p.m., I would still pursue my creative endeavors, let me say. I would find myself at Fridays traveling out or flying out to go do some performance. And then even sometimes I would just be catching a red-eye flight on Monday morning back here to Atlanta, sometimes driving directly from Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport directly into my cubicle. I was burning the candle at both ends. It was tiresome. It was exhausting. I will say, though, that as I continued doing this, and I did this for over a decade, as I continued doing this, it came to a point in October 2017 where I reached a fork in the road. Was I going to continue doing my profession, or was I going to go maybe full-time as a creative aspiration, right? Much like the wise words given in Jagged Edge, let's get married. I'm not getting any younger, might as well do it. So I went ahead and went out into the foray. I abandoned the security of a paycheck and health benefits. It was daunting, it was challenging, but I don't regret it. See, I realized for myself that sometimes they will pay you to postpone or cancel your dreams altogether. And I realized that every time that I found myself stepping onto a stage, it was truly an act of reclamation for me. This was a rediscovery of home. 4 months into this new creative path, I was presented with the opportunity to travel to the continent of Africa, specifically Kenya. My girlfriend was going to be working there for a little over a month or so, and so since I was no longer tethered to a cubicle, I said, you know what, I can take my work with me. So I was enamored with this. Off to the motherland I go.
We've all got to have this place where we come from. This place where we come from is called home. We set out on our travels. We do the best we can. We travel this big earth as we roam.
Such is the experience for plenty of Black people in the United States of America. We can only trace our lineage back oh so far due to the brutal practice of slavery. I mean, it forces us to have an interesting relationship with this continent because we have an attraction, but yet also a disconnect here because we know the people here are our family, even if they are distant. It reminds me a lot of what C.S. Lewis describes when he talks about heaven, when he says that it is the scent of a flower that he had not smelled, an echo of a tune that he had not yet heard. He says that he's news from a country that he had not yet visited. All I know is that when I landed in Kenya, it immediately felt familiar to me. It was incredible getting to see this rich land with this powerful cultural heritage and history. I will say that getting to travel throughout the entire countryside, whether that be Nairobi in the capital or Mombasa near the coastline, I'll say that the other part that was most interesting to me was when I spent some time in Lake Navasha, which was in the Rift Valley. Hiking that area with my girlfriend, we went through the gorges and the hot springs, but perhaps the most poignant time was when I encountered a Maasai community at the end of a walk. There was a beautiful soul by the name of Siente who just loved the length of my locks, and so she wanted to play with them, and we were kind of talking about how all the ways that we were similar and yet distant. Really, in talking with that entire community, it felt like a reunion of sorts. I asked them, I said, hey, do you encounter a lot of Black Americans here? And they said very quickly, no. Most times who they see is Mzungu. Mzungu is a Swahili term for people of European descent or white people. We're all comfortable here. So when they said this, my girlfriend at the time, she says, you know what? Like, I am going to see if I can get my family and my friends to all take a trip back here with us because I just want them to experience this too. They said very quickly, please, by all means, do this. Please, we want to see them. Tell them that we are your family. At worst, we're distant cousins, but we are family. Tell your friends and family that we are expecting them. And this just had a profound impact upon me. I mean, I think that when I think about the centuries of the brutal, inhumane practice of chattel slavery, triangular trade, ultimately the theft of a people, here I was being told that I had a place here for me, that people were there waiting for me. There goes someone leaving on a porch light again for me. It just struck a chord with me, and I'll tell you that honestly, I felt as though I had rediscovered home. At least that's what I thought.
We've all got to have this place where we come from. This place where we come from is called home. Even though we may love this place that's on the map, said it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at.
I flew back to the States to a phone call from my mother who was letting me know that my father was sick, but not just that he was sick, but that he was actually dying of stage 4 lung cancer. I'll be honest, like, here it was actually the last week of Lent. Easter was coming up that Sunday, and I certainly was in need of a resurrection. I felt much like another son who was praying in a garden, Father, if possible, pass this cup before me. Here it was that I had traveled to the motherland, and I was now losing a father. I flew back to Massillon, Ohio, but to be honest, I wasn't really flying back to Massillon, Ohio. I was flying to Altman Hospital. And to be more precise, it wasn't Altman Hospital. It was the cancer center inside of Altman Hospital. And I say that because at that point, Massillon was no longer home to me. Home was now any hospital room that had my father laying there, surrounded by family and friends, any place that had my mother and my brother and my relatives and my church family all together as we were loving on this lion of a man who was in the midst of transitioning. It was an incredibly tough period of time as we spent night after night in there. I'm talking about we slept on couches that weren't meant to be slept on. We sat in chairs that didn't recline far enough back. We talked to staff and got to know them on a first-name basis, all because the patriarch of our family was leaving us. It was a very tough time, but I'll tell you, I don't regret it at all. Every single moment that we got an opportunity to serve him and talk to him, it just meant so much to us. There was nothing that was left unsaid. I'll tell you that I held my father's hand more those last 2 weeks than I had throughout my entire childhood. And I was holding his hand when I was able to, I guess, kind of whisper some words to him on April 12th, 2018, letting him know a bit of the life advice that he had given me some years earlier. That is to say that he doesn't have to keep fighting. I said, congratulations, Dad. Now it's time for you to leave. They never tell you that when you become a writer, that you might have to write your father's obituary. I'll say that my dad passed and I buried him not even a year ago, and it's something that I'm still dealing with. I mean, they say home is where the heart is, but what do you do if your heart is broken? What do you do if it's in disrepair? If anything, the grief and the sadness has been instructive. It's something that has taught me that perhaps we don't always know where home is, but we do know it when we feel it. We know home when we experience, and that's maybe what it is, experience.
We've all got to have this place that we come from. This place that we come from is called home. Even though we may love this place that's on the map, said it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at.
Hiraeth is a Welsh word that doesn't have an exact English translation. The best that can be cobbled together at this point is to say that it is a noun, which means homesickness for a home to which you cannot return, a home which maybe never was, the nostalgia, the yearning, the grief for the lost places of the past. I guess it's something that I realize that whether it be Massillon, Ohio, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Lake Navasha in Kenya, or if it's even the cancer center at Altman Hospital, home is something that's constantly changing, right? Home is dynamic. It's not static. Home expands and it contracts based upon our needs. I guess in that way, I say this again, home, we might not know where it is all the time, but we do know it when we feel it. We know it when we experience it. And in that way, perhaps home is not something out there, but perhaps it's something in here. It's not something without, it's from within. And in that way, I'm realizing that home is something that I'm not traveling to, but yet it's inside of me. Home is in me. Home has always been within me. I don't have to go to home, but rather home, I have been carrying it with me this entire time. You see, any peace or security or serenity that I hope to find, it cannot be given by outside circumstances. It has to be something that comes from within me. And much like, I guess to say, a physical address throughout our lifespan, or even those houseless people that were mentioned in the poem Curb Appeal, home is constantly changing because we're constantly changing, right? It's part of why we're restless. Home is a dynamic thing. Home is complicated because we are always complicated, right? I often think of the Song of Myself, what's written by Walt Whitman, where he says, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." I think this shifting and this constant changing is why we are constantly having to reintroduce ourselves to ourselves. See, what I believed a year ago is not what I believe right now, and it may not be what I believe a year from now. Or I believe it to a much greater degree than I did in the past. See, we are constantly having a reawakening each day when we wake up, and that is partially why we have to remain on speaking terms with ourselves. I guess the thing that strikes me the most is to say that we, like home, are an unfinished, always in the work renovation project. And in that way, perhaps we are honestly probably the true habitat for humanity. I say all this to say, I don't know, embrace the transience. Lean into and settle into the impermanence. Leave the porch light on for yourself. We are all prodigal sons and daughters, and we must always, always extend an invitation to ourselves to come home.
We've all got to have this place that we come from. This place that we come from is called home. We set out on our travels. We do the best we can. We travel this big earth as we roam. We've all got to have this place that we come from. This place that we come from is called home. Even though we may love this place that's on the map, said it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at.